and good luck capturing the monster of Paradise Falls!
In regards to Pixar's endless quest to get us sobbing in the theater, I think the 2009 film Up particularly stands out. It was pretty unique in that it featured an elderly man as the main character, speaking to themes of growing up and what it means to get old. I think for most people, it's a distressing concept. The thought of our bodies and self-image gradually morphing over the years, perhaps changing us into people we'll hardly recognize. Or perhaps it's such a daunting thought because we fear what or who we'll lose along the way. We've seen some children's movies tackle the subject of losing older relatives, but rarely do we see a main character navigating life at old age. As someone who's not elderly but inching closer to an age where these thoughts become more prevalent, I appreciate this film for not being afraid to broach these topics in a heartbreaking yet comforting way. So in this video, I want to discuss how Up navigates the concept of growing old, how this theme resonates with people of all ages, and what it means to age with grace. I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video, Atlas VPN. If you're anything like Carl from Up, you probably have no idea what's going on with your computer as you visit various sites on the good old World Wide Web. But even if you're a little more tech savvy, the reality is even trusted websites mine our data for information all the time. And a VPN or virtual private network is the best way to protect against that by essentially masking your computer's identity. Atlas VPN encrypts your online data so that third parties can't track or hack your activity, making your connection more private and secure. And if you use the data breach monitor feature, it can also let you know if your personal information has been leaked by other databases. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount. You can get a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee by clicking the link in the description below. I like to use the service to watch films that aren't available in my country. With Atlas VPN, I can just switch my country on any device to bypass US restrictions, and then I'm off to watch Howl's Moving Castle on French Netflix, all in the glorious comfort of a secure internet connection. Click our special link in the description and get access to Atlas VPN's special deal with 82% off. Now on to the video. Up may have started Pixar's recent trend of animated features with life lessons for grown-ups. It paved the way for films like Soul that feature stories suitable for children but with messages clearly aimed at an older audience. Up pulls at our heartstrings from the start as we get introduced to a young Carl and Ellie. They spark a friendship born from the classic opposites attract magnetism. Carl's timid nature paired with Ellie's boisterous spirit.
I don't bite.
But they bond through similar values and interests.
You don't talk very much. I like you.
After their first meeting, we fast forward to their wedding day, where the iconic montage of their relationship starts. This opening sequence, often referred to as married life after its accompanying song, is probably the most memorable part of the film. I'll be honest, I don't think of myself as a big movie crier, but it only took Pixar 10 minutes to have me weeping. With this sequence's unforgettable music and lack of dialogue, it feels as though we're reliving Carl's memory of his time with Ellie, the ups and downs, witnessing even more how they complemented each other's personalities and navigated life like true partners. Director Docter noted how the sequence was based on the feelings he got watching old home videos shot in Super 8s, saying, "Watching them now, there's something really emotional about not having any sound that allows the audience to participate more actively and kind of imagine what are they talking about there or what happened right before this moment." And that feeling was all part of what went into the scene. These really beautiful little real life moments showing the highs and lows of life.
And as you watch it, it's like I say, I think because there's no sound, you're missing something. It becomes slightly more abstract and yet almost more real.
It reminds me of the ever-fading nature of human memory and how little details slip through the cracks over time, but the core feelings and moments remain. It's like that Maya Angelou quote, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Of course, Carl remembers big events like their wedding day and building their dream home, but what's interesting is all the little moments he thinks back on fondly, things they did that weren't necessarily special, that were just routine, but still felt significant in the grand mosaic of their lives together. And although everything didn't go as planned, they worked through it together, day by day. As kids, they made a pact to one day visit Paradise Falls, a beautiful place in South America based on the real-life Angel Falls in Venezuela. And while they tried to save up money for the trip, life always seemed to get in the way. So by the end of the montage, just as Carl bought tickets to finally fulfill his promise, Ellie fell ill and eventually passed away, leaving Carl her adventure book as a final gift. It's genuinely tragic to see Carl sitting alone after her funeral, mourning the loss of his wife, but also the life they built together. As he approached his empty house, he now faced the question, what do I do now? He had to confront this new reality of going on without Ellie, as well as the regret of having failed on his promise to her. I can only pretend to know what it's like to reach the age where, presumably, my best days are behind me. For Carl, his best days consisted of his time with Ellie. It's why he refused to sell his house when his neighborhood was set to be demolished for city skyscrapers. He clung onto the life he used to have, hoping to maintain a sliver of his former self. Carl was always a quiet, yet jovial person in his younger days, but with old age and the loss of Ellie, he'd grown into a bit of a grumpy guy. He always seemed annoyed with everyone and definitely had some major get off my lawn energy. But for once, we get a backstory for the cranky old neighbor, a glimpse into why he chooses to be so closed off from the world. And unlike many portrayals of elderly characters, he's not feeble or helpless.
Are you in need of any assistance today, sir?
No.
I could help you cross the street.
No.
While he uses a cane and experiences back pain, like plenty of us do at an alarmingly early age, he actually doesn't need much assistance. A mildly fresh take on older characters of this mold.
Could help you cross your yard?
No.
I could help you cross your porch.
No.
It's indicative of an experience many older people seem to have, as they often describe feeling much younger than their age, while the world around them sees them as something dissimilar to how they feel on the inside.
Well, I gotta help you cross something.
No, I'm doing fine.
It also reflects the bias many of us have regarding old age. Often we see old characters or even old people in real life as archetypes of static figures who've been exactly the same their whole lives. It's hard to contextualize them as someone who used to be young and vibrant with their whole life ahead of them. Understanding this, it gives us a deeper grasp and added context to what causes Carl to develop such a prickly attitude, blow up thousands of balloons, and float off to South America in his makeshift hot air balloon house.
I remember as a kid having a balloon and accidentally letting the string go and watching it just float off and into the sky until it disappeared. And there's something about that even that feels very much like what life is, you know, that it's fleeting and it's temporal, and something about balloons were really appealing, and also the idea of escape and floating away. And so as we developed the whole story, it became a lot about trying to preserve the past. You know, this guy, the whole world has changed. Everything around him is different now. The only thing he has this feeling of connection with his wife is his house. So he can't just leave that behind, he has to take it with him.
Carl felt he'd lost everything that brought joy to his life, and the house was the last vestige left from a happier time. In a way, the house itself became Ellie in his mind.
What do I do now, Ellie? Well, thanks for keeping us dry anyway, Ellie.
He talked to it like she was there listening, took care of every chair and knick-knack like he would take care of his wife. In a world increasingly ready to leave him behind, he preemptively set sail, not necessarily to recapture his glory days, but to make up for lost time and experience adventures he felt he missed out on, and to keep his promise to Ellie. So if the opening sequence is referred to as married life, I'd like to think of the rest of Up as life after love. After striking a construction worker during an altercation, Carl's ordered to move to an assisted living facility, which further stripped him of his agency. So naturally, rather than give up his house, he drifted away in an act that further separated him from the rest of society. Carl's scenario is obviously over the top cartoony, but his actions are understandable all things considered. A study by Malmo University revealed that people who reach an old age experience a sense of existential loneliness that's affected by the continued loss of loved ones. Specifically, the study states the older person's long-term relationships are gradually lost, and finally, the process results in the older person increasingly withdrawing into him or herself and turning off the outside world. Though we probably didn't need a study to be able to observe this, I think Up speaks to how tempting it is to remove ourselves from our communities when we feel like we've lost our connections to people. With so much sadness and pain, it can feel like a monumental task to simply get out of bed and interact with the world. But intentional seclusion can be detrimental to our health, as many studies show that social isolation and loneliness contribute to higher risk in a variety of physical and mental conditions, especially among the elderly. There's something innate about humans that necessitates at least some social interaction. The themes of isolation and how we deal with loneliness are prevalent throughout the film. It's a dilemma that affects several characters, including Russell, the 8-year-old Boy Scout, wilderness explorer, who inadvertently joins Carl's floating adventure. He's an adorably dopey little boy that reminds me of my younger self with his chubby cheeks and goofy disposition. He's introduced as a kid simply trying to complete his final merit badge.
If I get it, I will become a senior wilderness explorer. There's a big ceremony, and all the dads come, and they pin on our badges.
But as the film progresses, we start to get a clearer picture of Russell's home life, and realize his real motivation for completing his badge collection is rooted in the sense of abandonment from his father.
He promised he'd come to my explorer ceremony to pin on my assisting the elderly badge.
After his parents' divorce, Russell's dad seemed to no longer prioritize him, and understandably, Russell clung on to the desire to spend time with his father and hoped the badge ceremony would create an opportunity to see him. It's especially heartbreaking since we don't ever see Russell reunite with his dad. We don't get that cathartic moment for Russell where he gets what he wants most. More than just attaining his last merit badge, he simply wants to spend more time with his father. Loneliness is something even Doug the talking dog deals with.
Hi there.
Although he's one of many talking dogs in Paradise Falls, he doesn't fit in with the others and is often ridiculed. It reflects the kind of loneliness where we may physically be around other people, but we still feel isolated all the same. Also, I gotta say, this is the most accurate depiction of a talking golden retriever there has ever been or ever will be.
My name is Doug. I have just met you, and I love you.
But most interestingly, loneliness can also be observed in the antagonist of the film, Charles Muntz, another old character who has to be ancient by this point. Muntz is a foil to Carl's character. He serves to represent a life of thrills and adventure Carl never experienced. While Carl lived a mundane life with Ellie, Charles was a famous explorer, someone who they looked up to.
He is, in a way, the inciting incident for what got Carl and Ellie going. You know, he is the representation of what they want to be. He's this dynamic, adventurous guy who made a mistake along the way and chose that over relationships.
He explored continents and discovered wondrous artifacts while gaining fame and fortune. But even with this and his army of talking dogs, he clearly lived a lonely life, obsessing over the one treasure he couldn't attain. He spent decades in Paradise Falls with minimal human contact, trying to find the mysterious bird that tarnished his reputation. Also, he's literally a murderer. Like, I think we gloss over this in our memories of this movie, but he definitely killed a bunch of people. Anyway, I think Charles's character showcases what could happen if we withdraw too far into our shells. Not that we become murderers, but rather how we ultimately end up losing much of ourselves when we don't maintain our connection to people, especially as we grow older and it becomes harder to meet new people. While I'm personally pretty introverted, meaning I always need some downtime to myself to mentally recharge, extended isolation can lead to distorted perceptions of the world and the people we interact with.
Here they come, these bandits, and think the bird is theirs to take.
In finally meeting his childhood hero, Carl learns an important lesson. He sees how Charles has become a deranged, bitter, and broken man, still desperately clinging on to the life he had, and realizes it's a glimpse of what he could become.
In a way, he's a reflection of Carl, who made a bad move, and Carl would have become Muntz had he been allowed to, if Russell hadn't come along.
Carl's need to fulfill his promise to Ellie mirrors Charles's obsession with capturing Kevin. They both dig themselves further into solitude by trying to maintain a part of their past. Russell, along with Doug and Kevin, are what end up saving Carl from a similar fate, aging in solitude in Paradise Falls, never to be seen again.
A land lost in time.
Throughout the film, it's clear Carl's biggest regret is not going on an adventure with Ellie. As you get older, it's easy to look back on your life and ponder what could have been. What more could you have done to make your days more fulfilling? What adventure did you miss out on because of life's various obstacles getting in the way? It brings about an existential crisis of sorts as we contemplate what's worth our time in a finite lifespan. For some, they look to make their lives extraordinary. It's like that Latin phrase, carpe diem, meaning to seize the day. It's a sentiment meant to inspire us to actively live our lives to the fullest rather than just letting life happen to us. When most people think of this phrase, they imagine traveling to new sights, following their wildest dreams, or whatever other grand plans they hold in their hearts. But what if we reimagined what seizing the day could mean for us? It makes me think of an episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, where Zuko and his uncle Iroh wander through the slums of their new city.
I don't want to make a life here.
Life happens wherever you are, whether you make it or not.
In the context of Up, we spend most of the movie thinking adventure is what happens when we get out of our comfort zone and explore the great unknown, reaching spectacular achievements and creating awe-inspiring stories. But the film gradually recontextualizes what it means to go on an adventure, what it means to seize the day. Carl's notions of adventure were once defined by Charles, but Muntz's daring life in isolation was clearly not all it was cracked up to be. And after Russell told him about an otherwise unremarkable story with his dad, Carl at last began to question his initial plans.
That might sound boring, but I think the boring stuff is the stuff I remember the most.
Finally, his assumptions about grand experiences were thoroughly shattered by Ellie's final note to him in her adventure book. "Thanks for the adventure. Now go have a new one." She'd filled the pages of her book not with mementos from extravagant travels, but with photos of sunny mornings, birthdays, and picnics, the simple pleasures of everyday life with a sprinkle of momentous occasions. I think this speaks to us because, especially as we get older, we feel we'll run out of time to do the things we want, or that we don't have the capacity to start new hobbies or build new friendships. Up tells us that as long as we're here, we can still do those things. Sure, our plans might not be as ambitious as flying our house to South America, but that doesn't mean the simple moments don't have value, or that we should take them for granted. Regarding this appreciation for the little things, the director tried to weave this slow, contemplative thread into the filmmaking process itself. He seemed to have taken inspiration from another notable animator, Hayao Miyazaki, who incidentally also made a film featuring a mostly elderly main character.
The way this film was trying to harken back to some of those films where you set up a situation and instead of having to go, what happens next, move it along, you can allow the characters to just behave and react. And to me, some of the greatest animation, Miyazaki does this, Hayao Miyazaki in his films, these just little observations. And that's all they are. They don't further the plot, but they are beautiful little glimpses into real life, somehow captured and distilled and made even more real through animation. And that's what we're trying to do in this film as well.
Interestingly, it seems that children like Russell have a stronger appreciation of these day-to-day joys because they live more in the present. As we get older and more bogged down with responsibilities and big picture concerns, straightforward moments of happiness become harder to recognize. I think that's part of the reason many of us look back on our childhoods so fondly. It was easier to be content with small adventures, like eating ice cream on a curb with a friend.
Gray one.
Red one.
That's a bike.
Carl's modest life with Ellie was an adventure in its own way, and it's sweet she recognized and appreciated this before she was gone. So when Carl needed to clear the house of his contents to save his new friends, he gradually let go of the notion that the times he had with Ellie were the last meaningful moments he could have. In the end, as he let the house he built with her float away, he was ready to fully embark on his new adventure.
Sorry about your house, Mr. Fredrickson.
You know, it's just a house.
To have an old character come to this realization feels even more impactful, in the sense that we can do this at any age, regardless of the regrets we might have. And it doesn't mean the old times no longer matter, since we later see the house gently perched on the edge of Paradise Falls, just where Ellie had originally dreamed all those years ago. But it does convey that there's always room for more of these moments, particularly if we welcome them.
Can I stay?
Can you stay? Well, you're my dog, aren't you?
You're my master!
So by the end of the film, Carl became the paternal figure Russell had longed for, and in a symbolic moment, awarded Russell with the pin Ellie gave him all those years ago.
I would like to award you the highest honor I can bestow. The Ellie Badge.
And in the end credits, through Carl's new adventure book, we mostly see snapshots of his time with Russell and Doug. But notably, we also see a photo of him at the retirement home he'd previously scoffed at, hinting that he'd come to embrace the sense of community it offered. Ultimately, in going on these new adventures and making special memories with people who made him happy, he honored Ellie's memory more than he ever could have by clinging on to the past. What's up guys? Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm glad animation started to become more accepted as something adults can enjoy and take meaning from. I think we evolved to the point where this media has grown up with us and we're starting to see more animated features tackle some existential questions. I'm always looking for recommendations, so let me know what other films you think fall into this category. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.